everybody, and welcome to another episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng Zhu speaking, and we are at episode 87, Online Portfolio Tips. Now, I'm going to provide this as also a audio version on our new podcast. That's right, our podcast is now live, and you can find that at fcdpodcast.com. That's fcdpodcast.com, and listen to the latest episodes, including this one. You can also find us on iTunes by searching FCD Design Cinema. We should show up. Now, this episode might not be there by the time you see this on YouTube, but you can always get it from our website because we are a new customer to iTunes, and it takes about 2 to 3 days before they approve one of our episodes on YouTube, which is pretty instantaneous. The reason why I'm offering this as a podcast is because I think about 80% of this episode is going to be mostly audio. There's going to be video attached, obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, but it is not necessary since I'll be talking about all these points and the visuals are not that important. Now, the rest of this episode, the 20% or so, is going to have an image because I will show you some examples. So for those of you who are listening to the podcast, you can actually hit that website again. That's fcdpodcast.com, and we'll provide a link there for you to download the image so you can follow along. But in any case, you don't need it for the majority of this episode. So let's jump right into why am I doing this? Why am I doing an online portfolio tips? Is because our students, our term 3, they're graduating soon, and many will be looking for work. Now, online portfolio is one of the easiest ways to let your work be seen, but you should also go about that with some planning. So don't simply just put a bunch of stuff up and expect studios to hire you. So this episode will cover the do's and don'ts of those things, and I'm gonna turn on this little layer here. By the way, this is all being done in, this is all being done in real time here. I just made a bunch of layers in Photoshop, and I'll be turning the layers on and off to talk about each of the points. Now, I turn on this layer that says for students, pros, and I can pretty much ignore this because this episode is aimed mostly for students, because once you are a professional, you could ignore pretty much everything I say here. Once you have shipped products, you have worked somewhere for a few years, you really could do whatever you want because the way you get your job mostly will come from referrals. Even in my case, not to show off or boast or anything, just showing you guys how the industry works. I got my first job purely through luck of walking around GDC and ran into a producer over at Wargen Systems. They make the Wing Commander games. He told me to send a portfolio in. I sent it in and I got my job. And ever since then, I have never applied for a job. I've never sent a resume in. I don't have cover letters. I've never applied for a job. It's because once you're in, the industry pretty much refers each other. So when a studio looking for someone, they'll ask around and you do all this internally. So there really is no need for searching for work the quote unquote traditional way, which is sending resumes in and things like that. But I think today, because there's so many of you guys out there looking for work, you need to be prepared to compete and send portfolios in, cover letters, and so forth. So this really is for students because, again, for professionals, once you have a job, you could kind of do whatever you want. Your online portfolio doesn't even have to have anything related to what I'm talking about here. This is just for students. Okay, it's for those who have never worked before and this is the first time you are demonstrating your work to potential clients or someone who's going to hire you. All right, so let's jump in. We have a lot of stuff to cover here. I still have a little bit of a cold, and so coughs or my voice might sound a little funny, just like right there. I don't know if you pick it up. I start to run out of air a little bit as I talk, so my voice will start to taper off and it's really uncomfortable. But I'll try my best to take a deep breath to recover that air. I don't know what I have. It's like the longest running cold ever. It's going for about almost 2 months now, or a month and a half. But I don't want to delay any kind of episode, so let's get in there and let me take a sip of my drink here. All right. First tip, keep it simple, which means a bunch of things. 1, clean UI. Your work needs to stand out. Okay, don't design crazy graphics and all sorts of themes, and it makes it so hard for us to distinguish what is your work and what is part of the graphics. And in this case, I'm saying us because I'm also running a studio. Right? I have multiple studios, and we look for artists that send us work as well. So this is all through experience. It's just working at various studios, working my own studio, and just seeing nowadays probably thousands and thousands of portfolios that people have submitted to the various studios I worked at, and this is all from those type of experiences. Okay, so number 2, We're keeping it simple. For those listening, this is topic number 1. Okay, the topic is keeping it simple, or keep it simple. And these are the subtopics that goes with it. So number 1, clean UI, make your work stand out. Then we have no about, contact, and sub pages. What I mean by that is it just make your work easy to see. You don't need the about pages, the contact pages, and sub pages. For example, you divide everything into like vehicles, characters, creatures, and so forth. Because for most students, you just don't have enough work for justify giant categories. I've seen so many sites in which you click characters and there's like 5 drawings, and then you click environments, there's like 3. It's like if you only have a total of 20 to 30 pieces, don't make us search through categories to look for them. And also, we know what they are. If it's a character, we know it's a character. Those kind of submenus are generally meant for professionals who have a lot of stuff to show, and they're using that to divide that. But for a student, it actually can make your portfolio seems even more sparse because you just have like 5 or 6 per category, and that's it. And meanwhile, we have to dig around for it. Instead, make everything available right away. You don't even need thumbnails. Okay, you don't need categories. Just load the images. So we hit your blog or your online portfolio and we see everything at one time. Okay. Next, don't worry about bandwidth to our clients, right? What I just mentioned is you hit up everything and show all the images at one time. Don't worry, these clients are hiring you, us included. We have very fast internet. We are in companies that have some of the best internet possible. So we're not going to be worrying about how much it's going to cost us in bandwidth or speed. Just put whatever you want. We have the ability to load them up, so not a problem. Okay, next, make it easy for clients to contact you. Make sure your email address, if you want to put a phone number, if you're working in Los Angeles, for example, phone numbers are sometimes important, but at least your email. Make it easy. Don't hide it. Don't put it to a sub page like contact or put it on the bottom of your page. Just put it somewhere so we can find it. If we want to contact you, we don't have to go dig around for it. Okay, next, avoid complicated or plugin required portfolios. This is getting pretty rare now because now, ever since I think Apple came on the market, the clean look is pretty standard. But sometimes you do run into a portfolio which requires the download of special plugins, or is using Flash, which doesn't load anything on an iPad, for example. And it just makes it very annoying. No client is going to download special software to review your work. It's just too much of a hassle. So instead, just load JPEGs or some image format that's easy for us to see. And lastly, for this category is please don't put sounds and UI animations into your website, because the worst. I'm sure this is not just for portfolios, but you go to a website and music starts blasting, because a lot of us are listening to our headphones while we work, and all of a sudden this crazy sound comes out of your portfolio. It's very annoying. Or the other one is the animation of menus, for example. You try to get to gallery, but the gallery has to take like a 3-second animation for it to form itself. All those kind of things, you are increasing your chances of someone basically turning off your portfolio because it's annoying people. We're here to look for someone to work for us. We're not there to be entertained or to be part of your, I guess, a showcase of your work with this music playing and slowly loading things. There's no need for that. Let your work speak for itself. All right, I'm gonna move to number 2 now, big category, which is reduce risks/red flags. Okay, what this means is, number 1, remove links to your Facebook, Twitter, and other social personal exposure sites. Now, we all have Facebook, we all have Twitter and things. That's fine. But when you're looking for work, you're basically exposing yourself to potentially harmful information or even misleading information. If you have those links, most likely a client will click them. They'll be like, oh, you have a Facebook link. Let's go see how this person is. And sometimes your art could be great, but they read your Facebook and get the wrong impression of you. They might think you're a total asshole, or you complain a lot. Who knows? And the thing is, the internet is really bad for emotion. You can make a joke, but unless you're your friends or they know who you are, you might take that the wrong way. And if a client sees some of those posts, they might actually completely misunderstand who you are and go, oh man, this guy is making all sorts of crazy dumb jokes, or he seems like to be a very egotistic person, right? And that could actually swing you the wrong way. And this just increases, again, the chances of them not hiring you or continue looking at your portfolio. So if you have these sites, the best way for now, especially if you're looking for work, just turn them off. Don't link them to on your website. Once you're in the industry, got some experience behind your belt, go ahead and put all that stuff up. Doesn't matter. On top of that, if you do really want to have or if you have a Facebook account right now or any kind of social site, try to make them private. Facebook allows you to privatize your page. So when the clients are looking for you, and they will, trust me, these days with social media, they will look you up. So if you have a Facebook that you use for friends and family and makes all sorts of random talking and jokes and stuff like that, and you don't think it's the safest thing for your clients to see, well, simply turn that stuff off when you're looking for work or hide it, make it private. Next, no about page. Again, earlier I mentioned you don't need the about page, the categories, but the about page is pretty important sometimes to leave out, because sometimes I see portfolios in which the person talks way too much about themselves on the about page, and that can also steer you in the wrong direction. Sometimes they'll tell a whole life story about who they are. Now, you might be thinking from a client's point of view that could help you, but you don't know how someone's going to perceive you. You could be saying things like, oh, all I do is play video games. That's all I do. I play games. As soon as I get home, I play video games. I love video games. Thinking that that's going to help you get a job because you're thinking, man, I love video games. But to a client, they could also think, man, it looks like all you do is play video games. You're not actually working on anything. You're not researching, you're not reading books. You're just playing video games. So you never know which way they're going to think about you. So therefore, you can simply hide that stuff. Don't expose it. You don't need the about page. Just keep it your portfolio. And finally, no need for empty resumes if you haven't worked or shipped products. This is also something we see. Students don't have work experience, but they think a resume is important, because that's a standard way of applying for work. But in the business we're in, your portfolio is about 90% of everything. Your personality is the other 10. So a resume is sometimes not even necessary, especially if you haven't shipped anything, because what do you put on there? And that's when we see some funny stuff from junior artists. They'll put up their high school working at McDonald's. They'll put like they worked at a pet shop and so forth, or they helped at their parents' work. That stuff is not necessary. If it's not industry related, yes, it shows that you could work hard and things like that. But if you have good work, we know you can work hard too. So you could keep that stuff out, because it's kind of a time waster for us to see a resume that's pretty empty. Even things like schools and stuff, you don't necessarily need to mention them. Your work should speak for itself, because you could go to the worst school in the world or no school at all and have a beautiful portfolio. You could you could also, go to a very good school and have a horrible portfolio, which makes you even worse, right? Like imagine go to Art Center or something like that, this prestigious design school, and your portfolio is horrible. That'll make you worse, because it's like, oh man, you went to the best school in the country, in the United States, and your work is this bad. You're probably really bad, because that school generally don't pop out bad students. So sometimes you leave all this stuff out. Again, reduce your risk. When you're applying for work, all it is you're putting a lot of risk on the line, and every single step you want the client to reduce it by looking at your work and hopefully make the decision of hiring you. All right, I need to slow down here, otherwise my throat is going to totally dry out. I'm taking a drink. Let's move to number 3, things to avoid in a design portfolio. Bunch of things here. Okay, let's start. Number 1, fan art, both real fan art or emulations of other concept designers. Fan art, you're being hired as a designer, so fan art don't belong there. Nothing wrong with fan art. They're great. They're fun to do. But if you're being hired to generate original ideas, the last thing we want to see is you copying other people's work, right? Appreciation of other designs and stuff like that is fine, but we don't want you to see it on your portfolio when you're looking for a design job. Show us your designs, not other people's designs. And same goes for emulation of other concept designers. For example, there are really good guys like Sparth and EMAQ, and these guys are beautiful stuff you see online. And they tend to create their own little fan base of guys who are just copying their designs. That doesn't show much of anything. Now, if you're using that to learn, go ahead. That's totally fine. If you want to copy your favorite designer to learn from that, that's fine. But you can't insert their very distinct languages into your portfolio and not expect us, the clients, to know that you did that. Because those designers are well known. We all know who they are in the business. And if you put something that's so derivative of their work, it also puts you in a bad light, because we see you as someone who's not coming up with original ideas, who is just simply imitating. Because for those designers, for example, EMAQ, he is not copying that from somebody else, right? If you don't know who he is, just look him up. EMAQ, he draws these really cool kind of old flying ships, little barges. I'm sure he's looking at old ships, docks, harbors, little towns. He's looking at the real world for his inspiration, and out of that inspiration was born this IP that he has created. If you simply look at what he has done and spend all that time researching, and you just copying his design style, you're not doing much at all. You're just emulating. So that's something that's not very good to put on your portfolio. Followed by, you don't want plagiarism, tracing, and illegal use of other people's work. That's really bad. If you plagiarize, that's almost a giant no-no, and that's going to get you red flag in a business. Not only are you not going to get a job, you might even get into legal problems, especially if you plagiarize something that belongs to a studio. And the same goes for tracing of other people's work, or tracing of whatever, anything, and illegal use of other people's work. Like, for example, it sounds unbelievable, but there are portfolios out there that's composed of other people's portfolios. Because this industry now is so hot, I guess, especially the game industry, there are people who will do any means possible to try to get in, and that includes stealing people's work and put on their blog to try to get a job. Now, personally, I have no idea how that's going to work out. I mean, why would they do that? If you get hired for the job based on work that you didn't do, and they actually hire you, what are you going to do on the first day of your job? So I don't know. That's going to catch up to that person eventually. But if you're doing a legitimate portfolio, obviously you do not want that kind of stuff in there. Okay, next, overly violent, racist, or sexual content. Be tasteful. Okay, those things don't belong in a portfolio. It's not something we do in entertainment. Even though entertainment has violence and sexuality and all that kind of stuff, it is still within taste. At least majority of your products, right? We don't blatantly draw guys with their guts hanging out and flies all over and things like that, unless you're working for something like a Doom game or something that requires such content. But even so, they're done generally tastefully, and if you're a professional working on those products, the IP will save your portfolio, because you can have a guy like all rotten and zombies and stuff, but you put like, this is for Doom 4 or Doom 5. Okay, cool, that's for a project. But if you're doing it on your own and you're exhibiting tons of violent artwork, tons of racist stuff, sexual content, it's starting to say a lot about you as a creator. It's like, why are you doing this? No one told you to do this. This is not a professional work. This is what you'd be doing on your own. Then it also calls into doubt of what you're doing. So be tasteful of your portfolio and be aware who's looking at it. Sometimes it's not an artist. And we'll get to that eventually as well. I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, next. Don't put designs that are just trending on the internet. This is a big one right now, because as the social media grows in strength, more and more concept art are exposed, and concept artists are also exposing themselves with lots of cool stuff. And junior designers tend to follow trends. It's like, oh, The Martian comes out, let's all draw Mars stuff. Skyrim comes out, let's all draw snow stuff. The Last of Us comes out, so everyone draws post-apocalyptic kind of stuff. When that stuff comes out, it's very blatant where you're getting ideas from. You're not getting an idea from reading a book or being inspired because you went on vacation, or you saw some image in a book that totally made you want to design something from it. Instead, we know that, oh, you just play Skyrim, so therefore you're playing painting snowy mountains. Again, if you're learning, who cares? That's fine. But if you're claiming to be a designer, someone creating new ideas, making IPs, but yet you're showing us just popular trends that's going on the internet, that's not going to do you much favors. Professionals do that all the time because it's fun. Okay, for us, like I'm guilty of that. I paint stuff that seems cool, but I'm not a student. I'm not looking for work. Those things doesn't really affect my career, because I could even put up just funny stuff. In fact, I could even do fan art. It doesn't affect us as professionals because we have a massive portfolio that exhibit real industry work. So messing around, doing some trend stuff, it's just for fun. It's relieve stress sometimes. Sometimes it's just fun to be with friends who are drawing the same stuff. We're not doing it to get a job. But if you're a student, what you're doing is basically what professionals do for fun, and you're just copying or trending, drawing these subject matters. It's not going to do you much at all. It just very much screams out, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a designer. I'm here just copying other designer stuff. Okay, so try to avoid that as best as you can. It's a pretty big problem right now from young designers. Like when I see these portfolios at the events and shows, there is a lot of that stuff going on, which is like your portfolio has zero original content inside. It is everything that is trending on the internet for the last year. You have every single subject matter in your portfolio, and nothing that stands out. Okay, next is zero direction. Let me take a drink here. This is actually quite difficult. I'm trying to talk, but my voice keeps wanting to run out of air. It's a very weird feeling. Okay, zero direction of design language. And this is similar to what I just mentioned earlier with the trending thing, which is every design, every painting, every drawing you do is different from one another. And that shows us that you're still learning. You're still trying. You haven't found something comfortable. You're looking at this designer, oh, he's drawing this kind of shape, I'm going to copy him for a little bit. Oh, that guy's doing this, I'm going to copy him a little bit. Now I'm drawing an alien creature with organic arms. Now I'm going this. And basically every single piece is an experiment for you. That's fine when you're learning, But when you're looking for work, for us as pros, we see that as, oh, you're just learning. You haven't got down anything yet. You're still in the very early experimental phase. And it's very unlikely that we're going to hire someone who's still in the learning phase, in the very, very beginning learning phase. We're not going to give you a chance on a studio, but that's very, very risky for us. Okay, next is really bizarre designs. Okay, and I'm pulling quotations here. Original to be original is not design. Okay, there's portfolios in which you see such strange things. It is no longer grounded to anything on this planet. It is simply being strange to be strange. And in my GDC episode, I mentioned this before, which is popular designs or marketable designs needs to resonate with human beings. If you're just drawing crazy, weird stuff, almost borderline fine art, this kind of stuff, is there something wrong with it? I don't think so. I personally find some of that stuff quite interesting, but it's not marketable. And that's the thing. Companies are not looking at your online portfolio to think, oh, let's delete everything we have done in the last 20 years in this company and make everything like this guy's online portfolio. That's not what they do. They're not looking at portfolio after your stuff. What they're looking for is how can you fit into their company pipeline. If they're making real world World War II games, they're looking for someone who could draw real World War II things. So you got to make sure that your portfolio showcases or exhibit a large amount of designs that are marketable, and don't be just out there to be different. There are artists that made it with that kind of stuff, but generally you need to get yourself into a special case for that to happen. For example, H.I. Geiger, right, famous for his alien designs. He's an illustrator, I think, by trade, and he has a very distinct, very bizarre stuff, especially in the early 70s here. But you have to look at the roadmap and how that eventually got developed. Record labels, CD album covers, and things like that. Eventually, of course, he got into the alien. Great designer, great iconic thing. But nowadays, as a student, I don't know if something like that will still work for you, in which you're just doing something for yourself. He is, I think, by definition, still an illustrator, which is he's out there to create content of his own world, I guess would be the best way to say it. So as soon as you look at it, you're like, okay, that's Geiger's work. That was his thing. And this is a time period in which designs like that were very, very fresh and very new. And there weren't even many people doing this kind of stuff. Nowadays, you don't want to use that to stand out, to be just different, and no one recognizes it. Again, once you're professional, you have a paying job, you can start exploring some personal design languages, some stuff that's going to set you apart. But personally, I don't recommend students to experiment that very early before you get a job, because you're just reducing the chances of you getting hired. Okay. Remember, we're talking about the first job here. Very difficult to get your foot in the door. So you want to decrease that risk. Okay. Next, lack of project-based designs. So what this means is kind of similar to what I just mentioned 2 lines ago, which is about your designs changing all the time. This is also a sign of someone who's just out of a school or just drawing randomly, which is every subject matter has no relation to the next. It's like, here I'm drawing a still life. Now I'm drawing a mountain with a tower in it. And now I'm drawing a US Jeep. And my next image is a little kid with a dog. Next one is a house. Next one is a character that looks like a archer. Next is a garbage truck from 1995, right? When we start looking at that, what's going on? What is this portfolio made out of? And what that screams to us as clients is that you took a bunch of art classes, and each one made you do different subject matters and different things by different teachers. And you ended up with a random collection of things, and you put them all on the website. For us, we have no idea what you are doing exactly. It's like, and it tells us that you're still learning. You're still trying to find that comfort zone. So you want your stuff to look project-based. And we'll talk about that later with the visual demonstration, because you don't necessarily have to have things all in the same project. But you could manipulate your work to make it look like they're from the same project. So we'll get to that eventually. Okay, let's wrap this part up. The next one is super old stuff from your high school days. This is also sometimes pretty common on students. I need to stress again, this is for students, okay? You're fresh graduates. If you're a pro, you could put up your drawings when you're 4 years old. It's totally fine. Your resume and your project saves you from a lot of things. But when you're a student looking for work, you only want to show good stuff. Putting your work from your old high school days or bad drawings from art school, from your point of view, from a student's point of view, you might be thinking, oh, look, it shows progress. It shows that I can learn. It shows how bad I was and look how good I was. Imagine the potential of how I could be if you hire me. That's from your point of view. But from our point of view, from the client's point of view, we might be thinking, oh man, this stuff is really bad. And then you got kind of good, but that good stuff, if you put that bad stuff, which one's really you? What if the good stuff is because you're from a team project? What if the school helped you do half of this work? We don't know. So just keep it good work only and reduce the chances of us second guessing your abilities, right? Just hide all the bad stuff. You don't need to show them. Put it up later once you have a job. Okay, next, putting random collection of drawings from various art classes. Actually, I just mentioned this just a second ago, right? Don't put random stuff. If it's like a still life and a life drawing class, a study of cloth, right? These are kind of typical stuff you see from art schools. And if you go to industrial design school, it's like the cube exercise, a cutaway drawing, or explosive view. You mix all this stuff together in your portfolio. It's not a portfolio. It is showing you went to a design school or art school. That's all it's showing us. It's stuff that students do, but they're not projects. They're not things we use in the industry. They're merely progress of your learning, and you don't need to show that to us. Your portfolio or the design itself should contain all that. So another way to describe that is if you are, for example, a character artist. If you draw really cool characters and they're really good costume designs and they're really well expressed, their characteristics, their faces, their hands, and they're all done really nice, then obviously we know you could do life drawing. So you don't have to put the life drawing stuff in there. It's not necessary. But the thing is, professionals could draw that well. Generally don't need to put that stuff anyway. So this is for more students who are fluffing their portfolio with tons of stuff, including art school homework. Okay, and the last one on this list, which sounds bizarre, but I put it here, which is inside jokes. Okay, sometimes students will have some kind of inside joke art they done when they're in school, like they put a bunch of their classmates in the drawing, and it's funny. And when they did it, that might be entertaining for the group of friends. But us as a clients, we have no idea what this stuff is. And you might be thinking that's so cool because it's funny, but at the end of the day, like 3 people knows about it. And it's a very confusing thing to see on a blog when it's like, what is this piece about? Why are there a bunch of guys like laughing about something? It's like, especially if it doesn't do anything in terms of design or selling you as a good illustrator, it's just strange to have these inside joke type stuff. It's pretty rare, but we do see it sometimes. All right, let's keep going here. Category number 4, organizing your portfolio. Okay, now we talked about a bunch of stuff to avoid. Let's talk about stuff to actually do, okay, or how to organize it. So number 1, don't just throw random stuff. Okay, don't take a bunch of work you've done, don't name them or anything like that, don't group them and just throw it onto Tumblr or something, and there you go. Okay, because if you put in 5 minutes of your work and you expect us to hire you for 5 minutes of work putting a portfolio together, that's really, really strange, because you're asking a client to pay you, to perhaps even fly you in for an interview, to take care of you, to give you a full-time job, to give you health benefits and all this kind of stuff, and they have to do hundreds of hours of work plus tons of money to get you into a studio. Meanwhile, you spend 5 minutes throwing a bunch of stuff onto a Pinterest or something like that. Okay, spend some time to put your portfolio together. Don't make it a random thing and expect us to figure everything out for you. Okay, you have to be proactive on making your portfolio look nice. Okay, next, which follows that up, is organize designs into projects. Group stuff so it's easy for us to see. It's like, oh, good, this is a fantasy project worked on. And here's a real world project you worked on. Here's a science fiction project you worked on. So it's not just a random collection of this, that, all over the freaking place that we can't figure out exactly what you did on these projects. So yes, organize them into projects. Next, remove images that don't belong there. Sometimes you might have a one-off image that you did for fun or a particular project, and it just doesn't belong anywhere in your portfolio. In that case, sometimes just take it out. And with that same related topic is images that you might like, but it's not good, but you might like it, but your friends and the industry people tell you it's not good, you should probably take that out as well. Sometimes artists fall in love with their own work, or some certain pieces make you fall in love with it. Excuse me, let me take a drink here. So for example, you did that piece and that night you fell in love with a guy or a girl or something, you're on a date or something, you're at a good time, you painted this painting, and it has a lot of sentimental values, but only you know about that sentimental value. So you have an attachment to this piece, and you're always showcasing it, and it might not even be your best work. So in that kind of case, you have to just drop the sentimental part of it and just put up stuff that are industry and professional. So I know this sounds kind of strange, but we see this stuff. I mean, I've been teaching, almost 15 years, 16 years now. I've seen this kind of stuff show up in people's portfolios. And it's like, why is this there? Why is this image that's so bad in here? And they're like, well, I love this image. And I don't know why, they have all sorts of reasons for it. But when professionals and other artists are telling you this doesn't belong there, you should probably take it out. Okay, next, don't fluff up your portfolio. Only show your best work. Okay, for a student, sometimes, especially those who didn't work extremely hard, you might only have a few pieces to show that are good. Well, a few pieces is still better than fluffing up with all sorts of junk. You don't need to squeeze every single amount of work that you've ever done in school into there just to try to make up numbers. Put up good work only. In fact, if you only have 10 good pieces, 10 good pieces will go a long way compared to 35 really bad ones. So no need to fluff up stuff. Okay, let's move on to the next one. No need to show your old or learning images. I actually mentioned this a little bit earlier, but yeah, same stuff. You don't need to show us the process. You don't have to show, for example, when you drew this building, you used a perspective grid, or here's a really old version of that drawing that later on you drew a better version. That's all from school. That's all your learning process, and we don't need to see that. Just show us the result of it. But we do want to see your thinking stuff, and I'll get to that in a second. Thinking stuff, or thinking drawings and sketches and final drawings, are both industry, but the process is something we don't need to see. And that's the next point I'm going to make, which is no need to show basic technical processes. You know what, for those watching online, I should probably just turn on layers so I could actually draw on this. Well, maybe not, we'll see. All right, because this is real time. It might be weird for you guys to follow, but for the audio guys, listening audio, hopefully this is all going smoothly. Okay, let's keep going here. So I mentioned no need to show basic technical processes because we're industry people, we know that. For example, you drew a drawing and then you show the perspective grid, then you show that you do line drawing in the perspective grid, then you show a value pass, then you show black and white, then you show a color addition, and then you show the final. We don't need to see that process. Do show us the thinking process behind it, like the thumbnails, the rough comps. That's cool. We want to see that. And then show us the final result. You don't need to show us stuff that all of us know what it is. We know what comps are. I mean, we know adding values and we know what perspective grids are. We know that that's part of the process. That's something we don't need to see. Another example, which is quite common as well, is sometimes students will put up these digital paintings and they'll put the like little color sample swatches next to it, which takes 5 seconds to do in Photoshop, right? If you have an image or something, you take the little eyedropper and you sample a color, paint a swatch, sample another color, paint a swatch, and you have like 5 or 6 of them. Literally 5 seconds to do that. But that's attached if somehow it's going to impress clients. Like, oh wow, look, you have 5 colors and that's in your painting as well. We know that. These are things we already know. You don't need to show, I just noticed I misspelled already on my Photoshop version. Anyways, those listening are not going to know that, but sorry about the misspelling there. But anyways, yes, you don't need to show us basic school techniques. Like this is a warm and cool painting. Yes, we know that. Oh, this is a complementary color painting. Okay, yes, we know that too. So just show us the final result, but of course show us the thinking behind it, not the process. Okay. All right, next. All that basically actually means, the next point here is don't let your portfolio scream, I am a student. All the stuff I just mentioned earlier, all showcases that you're a student. And being a student doesn't necessarily give you an advantage. Some students think so, like I'm a student, so therefore I'm available, I'm inexpensive perhaps, I'm willing to move. Yes, those are positive points, but from a client's point of view, from a professional studio point of view, a student is actually pretty high risk. You have no experience. You've never done this before. We have to take the initiative to probably get you a visa and move you. Too much trouble. Let some other student do it first. Make him into a professional and then we'll work with you. So being a student or screaming that your portfolio is a student doesn't necessarily help you. Instead, my next point, make it calmly say, I'm a professional. So when I visit your blog, your online portfolio, that's what it just said to me. It says, wow, this work is great. It's nice. It's industry standard. It's very nice. It's very calm. And it just says, I am a professional. Okay, let me take another sip of drink here. Okay, next, color grade your images for smooth flow. This is something I'll get to later of the second part of this episode, which I'll show you guys that whatever image you have, especially paintings, you could color manipulate them to make them belong to a project. You don't have to leave them raw. Okay, just because you did it 3 months ago doesn't mean you could go back and touch them up. This is your work. And again, I'll get to that later. For those just listening only, what I mean by that is that you have 2 paintings. They're both, for example, science fiction. And one is blue-purple based, and another one is greenish based. Well, you could tweak the colors, say the greenish one, to be a little bit more blue. Now, what happens is it links the 2 images together. It puts them to the same project. All of you have watched movies, right? Hollywood films does this all the time. They color grade their entire movie. So if you're switching from one scene, it might be blue based, for example, and you switch to say the bad guys area and it's red based. Next time when you watch a movie, pay attention to this. It's called color grading, because before a film is color graded, it's all over the place because sets are not controlled sometimes, the lighting is a little bit different, the color of the clothes is slightly different, and it jumps a lot. And films right now, they color grade to make it very, very basically coherent. The entire palette is standardized. You look at the new DiCaprio movie, right? The Revenant. Look at that film. It's completely graded into a bluish tone to set the mood. Some movies, for example, like that movie Traffic, almost overdid their stuff, right? That movie, I think, was known for over color grading. But point being, you're taking an image and gelling them together with a similar color palette, and that makes things flow really nicely. And you could use that as philosophy for your portfolio. Okay, next, think the bigger picture and composition. Along that line of color grading your images, you could also make them flow compositionally. For example, you have an image of a tower, okay? Follow that by maybe a tower leading to a landscape, followed by now a landscape, followed by a guy walking a landscape. So you can actually plan your images so it flows naturally. Your viewer might not even know this, but we're creating a very seamless experience. And I'll try to demonstrate that later when I pull up the example webpage. So you can see what I mean by that. Okay, so think about the bigger picture, not just individual images, but how does it flow? What image is leading to the next image? Is it going left, right, and now it's right to left, left to right? So it reads very, very comfortable for your viewers, okay, making that experience nice. Okay, next, makes images flow into each other. Actually, I'll keep talking about points that I already just mentioned. So the next point is make images flow into each other in shapes, color, composition, etc. So I'll be demonstrating that shortly. And the last one, which is modify images if necessary. So sometimes you might even go in and delete stuff. For example, you might have a very hard color, like a bright red in the corner of your image. When you put that in a blog, it doesn't flow nicely with the other ones. Go back and paint that out. If you have a line drawing that has some stuff on there that's kind of going against your composition, delete those things out. These are your images. This is your blog. Make it flow. It doesn't mean everything you've done is locked in stone. All right, next point. Number 5 topic. Is this the portfolio your clients are looking for? So I listed 5 major topics. And if you're building a portfolio, take a look at it and see does it answer the 5 following questions. Number 1. Is it an art portfolio or a design portfolio? Okay, what are you showing on your work? Are you showing a artistic ability portfolio in which everything is like art stuff, like still lifes, portrait drawings, and so forth, basically very art heavy? Or are you showing a portfolio that solves problems, tons of design? Okay, they're 2 different industries. They have some cross in between, and I've done a design cinema on that, but they are very different businesses. One is pre-production, and the other tends to be post-production. Okay, the art side, marketing art, cover for magazines, cover for games, all that kind of stuff falls into marketing. And the pre-production stuff are sketches, ideas. These are things that belongs on a design portfolio. So take a look at your work and see which one it is. Don't make it confusing by mixing both either. Make a design portfolio if that's what you're trying to do. Number 2, do you demonstrate strong fundamental skills? This is the base, okay? All designers and professionals have very good foundation skills. This is the same thing as a basketball player dribbling balls, right? Dribbling a basketball. I mentioned this many, many times. It doesn't mean the basketball player might be good or bad on the court, but all basketball players that are professional could dribble balls really, really well. And some play better than others, obviously, but that's the base. Everyone needs to at least dribble a ball. For concept designers, you have to know how to paint and draw. That's the base. What do you do with that skill is to design, right? To give us ideas. But you cannot be bad at drawing and bad at painting and expect a company to hire you. So that's the base. And that's a challenge most younger students have, especially if you don't have professional training. It's hard to get that stuff up. And the giveaway of that is very, very quick. Like if you can't draw or paint, well, unfortunately, the rest of your portfolio is pretty much invalid. We're not going to look further if you're not demonstrating good drawing skills. So that's very, very important on a portfolio. Okay, number 3, are your projects solving problems and delivering new ideas? Okay, so this I mentioned numerous times already. What are you showing us? Are these just mere drawings or fan art or fans of other concept art? Or are you showing us problem solving skills? Is there a project in mind and you're trying to deliver all the solutions to this project? Is it a medieval game and you're solving the kingdom and the different cultures involved? Are you solving all the furniture designs? Are you solving the costumes and what people are wearing? That is something you're doing. And on top of that, are you delivering new ideas? Is this something refreshing or is this simply something you're rehashing from the internet? We want to see new ideas. Maybe you read a book. You've just finished a book by, say, William Gibson, and you're very inspired by some of the stuff he mentioned, or you finish reading Starship Troopers and you want to paint the Roger Young in the way you see it. Deliver those to us. We want to see those ideas, and that makes your portfolio very, very strong. Number 4, are you researching and planning your designs? Okay, so that means, are your designs coming from the real world? Are you looking and opening your eyes to things that are out there? Cracking open books, looking at Wikipedia, understanding your subject matter, because we could see that in your work. If it's design languages borrowed from other designers, that's also very, very easily seen, and that's something you want to avoid. Earlier, I was mentioning looking at other concept people's work, right? You're basically, if that's your research is looking at other people's work, then you're getting all your designs and shapes and languages from a derivative source. That original designer has done the work, like I mentioned Ian McHugh, right? When he's drawing those ships, I'm pretty sure he's not looking at other people's concept art. I'm pretty sure he's looking at nature, he's looking at old harbors and so forth, and getting all those ideas of old tires and ropes and metal and little chimney stacks and little fishermen with the pipes. He's getting that from the real world. And if you look at his work and simply copy him, that's showing very little research and planning. You're simply pull up his work, copy, right? That doesn't do much. Instead, show us that you got these ideas from looking at ancient cultures and history, functionality, machinery, armor design, animal anatomy. All these things count, and we should be able to see that in your work. And lastly, number 5, do you explore ideas through thumbnails or sketches? Okay, do you have roughs, or you simply using photos to bash? And this is also a pretty big problem going on with younger kids, which is a lot of photo bashing going on. They see professionals use photos and think that's all we do. Photo bashing is just one of the many, many techniques that could be used to sell a design, but it is not the only one. But I think this technique, quote unquote, seems easy. So some of the younger students just tend to bash a lot of photos. They don't possess drawing skills, good traditional painting skills, no thumbnail sketching, because when you photo bash, there is no thumbnail. There are no sketches that goes with it. We want to see those. We want to see your traditional thinking stuff, because what a thumbnail and a sketch does, it gets us the insight into your brain. All designers and artists like to draw and sketch. I mean, at least all the ones I work with are very, very good at this kind of stuff. And I could work with another designer purely off of thumbnails. And a thumbnail is also very hard to fake. For example, you have a digital painting. You could take 3 weeks to do one. It looks great, very nice. But for a thumbnail, it's very hard to fake the time. You cannot generate a smooth, fast-flowing line work of a thumbnail and try to do it in 3 hours. It's hard to do that. It just comes out in a matter of minutes. And that gives us a lot of insight into how experienced you are. You look at Frank Frazetta sketches, Sid Mead, and all these old school, I guess, icons of the business. Look at their sketches. They're done very quick, but contains 30 years of experience under that 5-second sketch. And professionals could see through those kind of things. We could tell if you're very, very good at something by simply looking at your thumbnail and sketches. In fact, I'll go as far as saying that if you're, now again, for students, this part doesn't count. I'm just saying how powerful a thumbnail could be. If a professional was to simply put a portfolio page together that has nothing but thumbnails and sketches, they could probably find work, because we could use those thumbnails to deduct that you're very, very good at everything else. I guarantee it. For example, I don't know if you guys know Ian McKeg, right? A guy I worked with on the Star Wars films. That guy is unbelievable when it comes to characters and creatures, and his thumbnails are beautiful. So if Ian was to put up a page of nothing but thumbnails, guarantee you every art director who looks at that and go, this guy is freaking good, and you're not going to pass on hiring him. Now for students, this is pretty tricky, because that kind of thumbnail generally takes years and years, 20, 30 years to gain that kind of experience. But if you do have thumbnails and sketches that look decent, put it up there. We want to see that. Don't show us just the finals. Show us how you think. Okay? All right, let me take another drink here. How are we doing on time? 40 minutes. All right, still good. Okay, category number 6. Big category is what we clients want to see. Okay, I just went through category number 5, which is this the portfolio your clients are looking for? Those are things for you to ask yourself questions of, do you have these things in your portfolio? Next is what we actually want to see. Okay, we as clients. Okay, here's a bunch of things. 1, original or marketable designs. I mentioned that already. Okay, which is designs that sells, design that the market could bear, that the market wants to see. It's original, but yet there's excuse me there, let a cough go through, sorry. Designs are very, very refreshing, but at the same time could sell to the market, okay? Number 2, fresh point of inspiration. Again, reading books, getting your source from nature, culture, show something refreshing versus a rehash of something that exists. Next, intelligent approach to problem solving, okay? Don't just draw stuff, solve them. For example, you have a vehicle and the door opens and that door has a positive shape on it. When it opens, does it have a negative for it to go into? I guess it's a little hard to visualize, but imagine a little speeder and it's got a little door on the side. When you open it, does it have a clearance to clear that little door? Okay, same thing for costume design for a character. The guy's holding a knife. Okay, does the knife have a little thing for it to go into when he's not using it? These are things we're looking for. Okay, attention to problem solving. Don't simply just draw stuff and leave it as an illustration. Give us the actual solutions. Next, related to this topic, is actual design solution versus magic solutions. Okay, it's very easy to do magic solutions. And what I mean by that is a guy could simply just fly, for example. Okay, in a way, that's a magic solution. Could look kind of cool, but if you could give us a power suit, say from Starship Troopers, and you kind of indicate the placement of rockets, some counterweight system, maybe even some hints of some rudder system on there, that shows us a little bit of design solution versus just purely magic. Like, oh, he works by a crazy force. You know, he works by this system called the something system, and he solves everything for you. That's hard to design for, and it's very hard for us to see how deeply are you thinking about your designs. Okay, next, show interesting. I put a bad grammar in here. Sorry, I typed this up a lot of text. It actually just say show interest in real world themes. Okay, let me pronounce that again with my tongue twisting. Show interest in real world themes. That means demonstrate the ability to draw things from culture or history, science, right, biology, all these kind of things, basically from the real world. So it's not all alien landscape and science fiction, crazy towers and spiky alien landscapes. Those are so far removed that's hard for us to judge how much of the real world do you know. And with that note said, look at the products that are out there right now. The films and games are out there. Most of it are culturally inspired. Most of it are grounded in this world. Very few are crazy out there. And if you look at your portfolio and look at the content of your designs, are those designs fitting for what's out there on the market for the last 10 years? Or are they simply just bizarre things where just things are just very removed from the real world? If that's the case, you got to prepare some stuff with real world themes, because most of the products we make out there are real world grounded. So, and this is something as a teacher, something you find it to be very strange, right? Because you look at games that comes out like, or even movies like James Bond or the Mission Impossible, The Revenant that just came out, right, with Leonardo DiCaprio, even Titanic and True Lies. I'm thinking Terminator, Genesis, right? All these films. On the game side, you have Metal Gear Solid, you have Fallout, Skyrim. Look at these IPs. They're quite grounded. They're not crazy. They're not out there. They don't have spiky alien monster mountains. They don't have big giant organic spaceships in them. Those games and films exist, but they're very rare. There's only 1 or 2 of them per year, if that gets made. But yet, sometimes you look at student portfolios, their portfolio is almost the complete opposite with what the industry actually does. And not just for that year, but for the last 10, 15 years. It's things that nobody does. Nobody makes these things, but yet it's fun to draw. And that is important, to look at your own work and go, am I marketable? Are the designs I'm doing something a company can actually use? Or are you simply drawing these because it's either trending or fun to do or easy to do? Because spiky mountains is very, very easy to do. But the likelihood of everyone hiring for that is very low. Okay, next, able to draw production art. This is also very important, especially for industrial designers if you're doing hard surface, because you just don't want your portfolio to have nothing but flashy stuff. Okay, flashy meaning it's painted, it's photo bashed, it's epic and stuff. Can you translate those flashy stuff back to a very boring production art, such as orthos or orthographics or layout drawings, blueprints? Because if you designed it, you're gonna have to clean it up and show to us how to build it. Because a concept artist's job is not to make any kind of art. That's not what we pay you to do. We're paying you to give us designs. So if you come up with this epic painting that looks great and we bought the idea, well, I have maybe 300 3D artists waiting for that kind of stuff. So you need to break those flashy drawings back down to a productionable drawing, okay? Draw blueprints and these kind of very difficult, time-consuming drawings like Warthos, because my 3D artists need those. The 3D artists generally don't work off of flashy paintings when they make a game or film. They need the production drawings. So showcase some of that on your portfolio. Next, demonstrate range in design language and adaptation, okay? This means don't get, your portfolio shouldn't have a single design language or single type of style. At least have a few, okay? Show that you could design, for example, real world, and you can also design in fantasy. I'm not talking about styling, I'm talking about design language. Okay, for example, you have a project that looks like 1940s, pre-World War II, or say 1950s, right? Post-war, baby boomer era in the United States, okay? And you can show that you can adopt that kind of language. And then after that, you do a project on, say, not World War II, let's do current day, okay? A project takes place in current day. And then you have one more project that is fantasy. It takes place in Western Europe, castles and horses and such. By having that, we could tell that you could adopt languages, not just drawing style, languages. So you could tell that, okay, how do I make the real world look like real world? And that generally entails design language understanding, ability to research, and ability to know exactly what's going on during that particular time period. So all that stuff is very, very useful in a portfolio. Okay, next, you are not limited by a very specific theme or style, which I just mentioned. Okay, if you only draw a particular style, you can stick to that, but sometimes a little risky, because then the studio hiring you have to like that style. Because if you're drawing, say, something extremely cartoony, then you're limiting yourself to the few studios that can hire you for that cartoony style. And if these studios are not hiring, well, you're out of luck. And also, if you're doing a style that's very popular with many people, and that's the only style everybody's drawing, well, now you're categorizing yourself into more competition versus having a few things for you to work with. Okay, next, you can design characters, creatures, environments, props, and vehicles. Okay, a concept designer's job, especially in a full-time position, they tend to make you do everything. If you only want to do creatures, and if you only want to do characters, that's fine. But just like the styling thing, you're limiting yourself. And if you're going to do that, you better be one of the best ones at it. Because if we're looking for character guys, then we're going to go for the best. We're not going to go for the mediocre. Because if you're a character artist and that's all you do, then you better make that some of the best stuff ever in your portfolio. And because that's the stuff we look for as a client. But generally, if you're full-time, you're working on, say, RPG, that RPG is going to have characters, creatures, environments, everything. And so we don't want a designer to come in and once you're done with the characters, you have trouble drawing environments. Well, that's going to cause a problem because we could just find someone else that could do both. And there are plenty of those guys out there who could do both. So the likelihood you're getting replaced is pretty high. Okay, let me take a drink before a cough sneaks in here. Okay, next, what we want to see, strong drawing abilities. This I mentioned already, but the ability to draw raw drawings, super important. Okay, we want to make sure that when you're in a meeting with us, in a meeting room with a piece of paper and a pen, you're able to sketch out ideas. We could put stuff onto a wall. We could draw on a whiteboard, right? Some basic drawing, not just basic, very strong drawing abilities. Just in case there are no digital tools around, you can still draw. We can always rely on you to give us good line art, okay? Followed by, do you have confidence and experience in drawing and painting? Okay, we want to see that level of experience. Even if you're a student, if you draw a lot during school, your drawings are starting to look confident. We could tell the difference between someone who is still learning. Their lines are generally a little stiff, a little shaky. Perspective grids are perfect. These are all generally signs of someone who just got out of school. It's like everything's too student-like. Okay, but professionals start to know where the shortcuts are. They start to know where the line weights should start to taper. They know how to accelerate their lines. They know how to grid their work so things don't look like they're on a perfect 90-degree grid. These are all things that show confidence in your work. And you could do that as a student if you work hard at it by doing many pieces. Next, wide exposure to how the world works. Okay, have common sense. This is something related to the Design Cinema episode, but demonstrate to us that you're very well aware of how the world works around you, how do plants grow, how do animals walk, how do they, when a lion is standing on a rock, what is its paw position? When a vehicle comes to a stop, where are its tires? Okay, when a soldier shoots a gun, where is the shell casing ejecting from? These sounds like common sense, but if you're not doing this every day and learning about it, it could look very bad if you do these or make these mistakes, because we could tell you're not good at this stuff. We're asking you to create IPs, to create worlds. So in order to create a world, you have to understand how a world works first. Okay, so you have to show that in your portfolio. Next, let your design speak. No need for tons of text. Okay, sometimes portfolios we fill with text explaining the designs underneath it. No one reads this stuff. We love to read. I myself, I love to read. But when we're looking through a portfolio, we're not going to read your stuff. We have other things to do, and the last thing we're going to do is spend 10 minutes reading some text. So just show us your designs, let us speak for yourself, and especially for most students, your designs are probably not that complicated to justify an entire paragraph of design. We could figure it out by looking at your work, right? So by the way, I'm not doing this to be mean or to sound like clients are way above you or anything like that. I'm just giving you guys a real world taste of what is needed to get into this business. It is so competitive, and I'll get to that a little bit later as well. It's like a lot of people look for these jobs, man. You have to put yourself out there and make your work scream out professional and make us see it fast. All these things basically slow down and increase risk. So I'm just doing that to do that. So don't think I'm all like, oh, we're better than you and things like that. No, it's nothing about that at all. Yeah, you guys listen to my shows enough to know that I'm very, very nice and humble about looking at student work. But I also teach, so I see both sides. But for some professionals out there or studios, they're not in the job of teaching students. They only want to see the result. So they're not going to care about your research text and all the notes you made. Maybe someone asked for it on an interview, but most just want to see your work. Okay. All right. Next, strong knowledge of games and film industry. I'm not sure how to demonstrate that in a portfolio, but sometimes the design resonates some kind of influence by. This one's a hard one to explain, I think, in words. It's generally when you see something, we could tell this person is quite exposed to the business. Let me try to think of an example. I guess one would be like if someone drew a little town for an RPG game, right? They know the type of stuff that goes in, like the weapon shop, the inn, the item shop, the bar, some kind of center point, like a fountain or a statue. They tend to know what goes there and that tells us as a client, okay, good. If we put you on an RPG game, you tend to know at least the basic structures of what we need. Okay, can that structure change? Of course it can, but those are very basic things that we don't want to spend time teaching you. We don't want to hire you and tell you, make a town. You're like, well, what do I put in it? And we tell you, well, what RPG games have, and you tell us what do they have. Is there something wrong with that? Like, maybe, but still, that's going to eat up time, and we have to explain to you, well, in an RPG game, the first thing you do is probably go into an inn or a bar to get quests, and the designer will be like, what does that mean? That's going to be pretty frustrating. I could see that's not a big problem, but it could be frustrating if you know absolutely nothing about how games or films work. And in terms of films, it's even things like, if we mention old movies, do you know what they are about? So if I mention we want the explosion to feel like the Tetsuo scene from Akira, do you know what that means? Or we want the effect of the tire to burn out, like how the DeLorean burns out Back to the Future after it goes through the time portal. It tires, leaves a little trail of smoke, right, or fire. What if we're mentioning those kind of things? Okay, are you aware of those kind of things? And that's pretty important. Okay, next, think and work in 3D. Okay, including actual 3D software. When you're designing, eventually all your stuff will be translated into a 3D object, either be a real 3D object or a polygon 3D object. But whatever it is, it's going to turn to 3D. So you have to think in 3D. Can your products be built in 3D space and not merely a 2D illustration? So if you design a vehicle, can we open the doors? Can someone fit in there? If you design a character, can that belt go around the guy's waist? Can the armor actually be worn on a 3D model? These are things you have to demonstrate in your drawings. And we can see that. We can see if you're drawing in that way or not. And knowing 3D software is helpful. It is becoming more and more common now for concept designers to know 3D. And even in the school we're running, we teach them how to use SketchUp and ZBrush. So we don't go beyond that, but that's enough for most concept designers. And because we're using 3D as a tool, we're not there to compete with 3D artists to model stuff for the games or films, but we're there to kind of get our designs in a solid 3D, a real 3D in terms of software-wise design. So we can spin it in the camera and make our clients look at it. So that all is very helpful. Now, on my video version, I have a last line that says, don't believe me, let's go take a look. What I'm doing here is that I'm actually going to load up my browser here. Okay, for those watching now, if you're on a podcast, I'll read the stuff out loud anyways, but if you're watching, obviously it's on the video, but if you're on a podcast, you could maybe go back and take a look at YouTube and what I'm talking about. I put up my browser here, Google Chrome, and I've opened up a couple of 2 pages showing recruiter sites. Okay, the first one I put up is BioWare. I just went to BioWare and went to the job section, the career section, and right now I'm doing this in real time, so I'm going down here and it has a couple of jobs listed under art. 3 of which are concept artists, right? They have a concept artist available in Austin. They have another one called senior concept artist in Austin. They have another one called concept artist in Edmonton, Canada. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on these to show you what their description of what a concept artist does. And all the stuff I just mentioned here in my PSD file here, you will see a lot of that stuff show up on their page. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the concept artist position at Edmonton for BioWare. Okay, let's click it. Let's see what it shows us. All right. So there's some description about BioWare and the kind of games they make, like Mass Effect and Jade Empire and KTOR and stuff like that. Okay, but here's what it says. We are hiring concept in all 3 locations, in Edmonton, Montreal, and Austin. What the concept artist will do at BioWare. Pay attention to this, because if you're applying for a job, right, and you send a blog or online portfolio to BioWare, but yet all the stuff they mention is not in your portfolio, they're not going to hire you. They're putting this stuff here on purpose. They're not writing this text and job description randomly. This is what the company wants you to do. So if you're sending a portfolio, you have to match it to what they want you to do, because this is also something we see as a teacher or someone in the teaching industry, right, and the education industry. We see a lot of portfolios, and sometimes a student will be like, "Well, I'm applying for the studio," and they look at their portfolios like, you have nothing they want. This studio don't do anything, or you're not demonstrating anything in your portfolio that shows what the studio actually does. So it sounds like common sense, but remember, studios are not hiring you to draw things. They're not hiring you to be an artist. They're not hiring to draw pretty pictures. They're hiring you to design and come up with ideas. In fact, I will mention those words in the BioWare description here. So the first one, it says, work closely with art directors and production artists to create a cast of highly believable characters and immersive game environments. Notice the word create, okay? Their first line is not, we're looking for someone to draw us pretty pictures and paint us pretty paintings. That's not what they want. They want you to create a cast of highly believable characters. That's design work, okay, not drawing work. In fact, I don't think any of these websites are going to mention art at all. They're going to use design words such as create or ideas or generate, these kind of words, okay? So that's the first line. Second line, they mentioned create a world or create a wide variety of additional concepts, including creature design, hard surface props, and vehicles. So I just mentioned this not that long ago. They basically said you have to create characters, environments, creature designs, hard surface props, and vehicles. So basically everything under the roof here. And again, they use the word create, not draw, not paint, create, which means design. Okay. Next, they're going to say, they actually use the word design in the next line here. Okay. Design original concepts that fit within the project style guide. Okay. This is what I mentioned earlier. Do you have the ability to adopt? If you could design 1950s projects, and you could design a World War II, and you could design a modern day, that could demonstrate to us you could adopt the projects. You don't have to draw RPG things to get into BioWare. I'm pretty sure of that. What they want to see is, can you adopt languages? And in this case, they want to see, do you have design concepts that could fit within the style guide or particular project? They didn't mention design concept that fit within their project. They mentioned within a project style. So if you have a project, let's say 1950s designs, and you did a really good job showcasing this 1950s and research, you drew it nicely, we could see that you could probably do this. Okay, next, translate high-level ideas into production-ready art packets. Okay, we just talked about this, which is high-level ideas basically generally breaks down to epic paintings and establishing things. Let me take a drink here a second. So once you do those high-level ideas, they want you to translate that into production-ready art packets. Okay, that's Worthos and line art and things like that. So that's a required skill right on their website. So if you don't have that in your portfolio, they might not like it. Okay, next, maintain a high level of quality art while providing a variety of ideas. So notice they used the quality and art at the same time. So we get the question, which is more important? Good ideas or good art? Well, they just told you right here, they want both. They want high level quality art while providing a variety of ideas. In fact, they mentioned 3, which is quality, quantity, and quality, right? So they want, quantity, quality, and quantity. Yep, so they mentioned good art, a lot of it, and good ideas. You see? So this is what professional studios want. They want you to draw many ideas as possible because that's what they're paying you for, but they want all these ideas to be drawn well. That's a huge challenge for students who typically is missing one of those 3 factors. Either they draw really well or slow, or they draw a lot of things, but the quality suffers, or they have a lot of things and draw really fast, but the idea sucks. A professional needs to do all 3 of them well. So, and that's right here on their site. Okay, next they said provide in-depth research, reference material, and develop concept ideas. Okay, this we could see through your thumbnails and your sketches. If you're thinking, we could tell how you're thinking about it. Are you doing it, or are you doing a thumbnail purely trying to get a drawing to look right? And this is pretty common for younger students who are learning. Basically, they're still struggling with art. They haven't got the base down yet. So when it comes to character design, it isn't about the design. They're just trying to draw the character, like a face or a pose, or for a vehicle, they're just trying to outline a basic box. That's a thumbnail. That's not a design thumbnail. That is a thumbnail to try to draw well. What we're looking at is design thinking thumbnail, which is here's one design of a costume, here's a design of another costume. The artist and designer is so confident in their drawing skills, they're not using a thumbnail to try to find the drawing. They're using a thumbnail to find the design. And using that, we could tell if you're researching, you're looking at materials, and then you pick the best of those solutions and clean it up to be something presentable. So big difference in terms of the sketch quality or the sketch, what the sketch actually contains, right? I'm sure the younger audience knows what I'm talking about, right? Because I did that when I was young, when I was trying to draw like a character. I spent most of my time just trying to draw a face or trying to draw a hand. Nothing about the design at all. And once the drawing looks good, like the character looks good, then you design the costume on top. Professionals, they could draw the character. They go straight to the costume design. So big difference, and we can see that in your roughs. Okay, next on BioWare's site, it mentions create lighting schemes. Excuse me, let me take a drink. Create lighting schemes and color palettes that capture the tone of the world. So these are generally your layout drawings, your mood boards, and things like that. Pretty important to have and have basic understanding of your lighting and colors. Next, they go on, create storyboards and dynamic keyframes that illustrate the story and or gameplay. So this is also production stuff. Okay, notice they use the word create twice, not draw, create stuff. Okay, they want you to know how to do storyboarding. They want you to know how to do composition, which are keyframes, right? They want you to illustrate stories. What that is know exactly what's going on in this IP and use your drawings to tell that story. Pretty hard stuff. And lastly, they put ability to create photorealistic work. Why they put that last? Because photorealistic, in my opinion, is a tool. It's a style. So even for BioWare, they put it as one of the last things on their to-do list. So that's why it's not the biggest thing. It is important, but it's not the biggest thing. Have all these stuff they mentioned above and the stuff I mentioned in my list is what's important to them. They go on to mention a bunch of stuff that's required to get this job, such as you need, this one's pretty important. For example, they mentioned years of experience, okay? Now, they do this sometimes to scare off very, very junior people. For example, someone who's 14 years old at home and just spamming a website with portfolios. They put that there to kind of scare you off. Now, a student with a lot of experience sometimes could bypass this. And I've seen this many, many times in a studio in which they put 5 years experience, but yet someone with no experience gets hired. It's because their portfolio looks like it's got 5 years experience in it. But take this with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean that you have bad portfolio, you never worked, now going to start sending stuff to BioWare. Be aware of what you've done. And I'll go back to my PDF to talk about that, okay? I'll skip the rest of the stuff on their site because the rest of it has like, well, let's go through and read it because he has things like ship video games is a plus. It's a plus, not a must. It has ability to create concept from scratch and create color studies. Again, they're going back to someone who could create concept from scratch, not copying, not tracing, not derivative art from other people, okay? Next, environment and component idealization and design. Okay, so the ability to draw real environments, and they mention realistic and military alike, right? So they just want someone who could design, who could think, okay? Basically the wording, everything I just mentioned to you guys, just slightly differently worded, but it's the same meaning. Next, very strong traditional illustration skills in a variety of mediums as well as excellent drawing skills. Matte painting experience is a plus. So mentioning that you have core skills, you have the ability to simply draw and paint. Next, they go on to mention a strong ability to think in 3D. I just mentioned that as well, okay? Draw in 3D, know your designs in a 360 turntable, not just a 2D flat image. Next, strong fundamental skills, including good use of light, shadow, and color. Okay, mentioned that already. Storytelling and concept development, obviously. And lastly, ability to work within specific styles, including a style set by another artist or art director and mentor other concept artists, right? So this is going back to, again, can you adopt design styles? Or do you only draw your way? If you only draw your way in your own design language and your own design style, it's going to be pretty hard for these companies to hire you. So let's sum it up, right? So if you go to BioWare, and you guys can do this, just type in BioWare jobs, you'll find it for concept art. Look at the stuff they list and then look back at your portfolio. Are you doing these things? And you cannot somehow magically wish it to go away. Like, I don't have these kind of things in my portfolio, but maybe they'll ignore it. They're not going to ignore that. This is a job. This is a paid professional career. You simply can't walk into these careers wishing that they ignore these topics. For art, it is so confusing sometimes because it's so, I guess, in your face. It's just a drawing. Just like kind of, I think music falls in the same category. It's like, oh, I could sing, I could become professional. The chances of someone becoming a professional singer from zero training or zero kind of industry experience happens. but most of these guys started when they're very, very young. It's not an industry you can simply just walk into, right? It's hard, and art and design is the same thing. It looks easy from the outside, but it is a professional career like any other. If we change this topic to now say a mathematician researcher at NASA, okay, and that's their job description, and imagine they put stuff like must know advanced physics, must know algorithm, blah blah blah, right? Tons of stuff. Must know your planetary rotation calculations and blah blah blah. And then you're applying for this job and you know some very basic math, and just think, maybe they won't care that I don't know advanced physics or got a degree in astrophysics or something like that, right? Maybe they'll just ignore that and hire me for my basic math skills. That doesn't work, right? So same thing in concept art. If they're putting this kind of stuff on their job list, they're looking for people that could do those bullet points. So you have to be honest with your portfolio and look to see if you have it. This episode is going to go pretty long. We're at an hour and 10 minutes right now, but let's keep going here. I'm actually at Blizzard's site right now. Blizzard has a job list for a concept artist. It's a temp job, but it's there. So we'll just really quickly go through this, right? So they have things like create concept for various projects as assigned. Concept work will range from, but not limited to, characters, environments, props, lighting, and VFX studies. So basically everything. Okay, black and white sketches to fully painted images as needed for the projects. That means idea generation, rough stuff, able to generate ideas. Next, may also be done using a variety of 3D packages to model and render assets, right? So this is, if you know some SketchUp, you know some ZBrush, go ahead and use it to design. And next, create in-game art for Blizzard Entertainment's development team on occasion. So that could be probably what that means is like you have the ability to do some texture work and things like that to help them paint, because it actually says in-game art, which is not concept art. That's stuff the clients or the players actually see. Next, work with producers to complete tasks by assigning due dates. This tells you better be professional. You're not here to draw and paint and have fun. We have deadlines and you have to be able to work within due dates, right? And then last one they put is work with lead artist or art lead to achieve the necessary final image quality. So listening to directions, working with people. Okay, so very similar. These companies all have these needs, and these needs are just professional job requirements, and you have to demonstrate that in your portfolio. All right, let me hurry up here because we still have a few more bullet points to go through here. Let me see here. Okay, let's turn on big giant topic number 7. Now that we mentioned what a company looks for, let me share with you a little bit of behind the scenes of what actually goes on a portfolio review. Okay, so what goes on behind the scenes? That's topic number 7. 1, there is no portfolio review team. Contrary to maybe what a young student might think, there is no department to review portfolios. There is no one that sends it and it goes into like portfolio review department. No such thing. Who reviews your portfolio is very random. Sometimes it's receptionist, sometimes it's HR, sometimes it's the concept guy, sometimes it's the art director, sometimes it's a producer, sometimes you're going to be a CEO. Very, very random when it comes to concept design reviewing, because it's a design portfolio, so anyone in the studio can have an opinion on what it is. Very different, say you're doing a programmer's portfolio. Well, the only people looking at it are most likely people that could write code. Otherwise, no one understands the stuff. But when it comes to design, a lot of people are looking at it, okay? Because the guy who writes the stories, or the lead designer who writes the story and all the the in-game balance and things like that, they're also interested in looking at concept art, right? The CEOs, obviously. So it's very random. So there's no review board. So you gotta make sure that this stuff is seen and pleasing to everybody. Okay, let me take a drink. Number 2, it takes less than a minute to decide if you're good or not. This might sound crazy, but that's totally true. It doesn't take pros that long to decide if you're good or not. We're not looking at your portfolio for like 30 minutes deciding if you're good or not. It happens probably within 20 to 30 seconds, maybe less, okay, that you could tell someone it's good or not. Sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true, because professional things screams professional work. Very few times do you look at it and go and can't decide, it's like, this guy good or not? It's hard to find those portfolios. Either you're good or you're not. And then it takes another few minutes to decide if you're right for the project or for the job, because someone's good or bad. If they're good, it doesn't necessarily mean they're actually a fit for the project. There are a lot of good designers out there, but for the projects that we're hiring for, they might not fit the bill. For example, we're looking for someone who does a lot of cultural World War II stuff, right? That's in development. Well, we're going to look for someone who has done that work before. If you have nothing but high fantasy on your portfolio, and some of the best fantasy ever, dragons and knights and villages and all sorts of dungeons and stuff, and that's what you're really good at, and you might even have some science fiction stuff, But if you don't have anything with culture and World War II in it, well, we might be a little hesitant. We might be looking for someone who actually has some of that in their portfolio. So one thing is to take a few seconds to decide if you're good. Next is decide if you're actually fit for the job. And that all that stuff happens within minutes when looking at a portfolio. Okay, next, portfolios are always not reviewed in the best conditions. Okay, and that means sometimes reviewed in very tiny browsers, on very tiny screens, sometimes seeing in very bright rooms, or sometimes they're seeing on iPads. So make your stuff easy to see and don't make things too dark, okay? Because as artists, we generally are sitting in pretty dark offices. Like my office, I don't have the lights on. It's pretty dark. But when portfolio is being reviewed, you might be in a bright lit office because you're looking at it on an HR person's screen. And they generally sit in the office areas and they have small screens. They don't have the 30-inch high HD screens that the artists tend to have. So you might be looking at your portfolio on those screens, or even CEOs, they don't use big giant art monitors. Most have little tiny laptops and things like that, but they might be looking at your work. So just make your stuff easy to see, nice and big. Make sure dark stuff are a little bit brighter. So it's not, because looking at dark stuff in bright rooms make your image pretty much look like blacks. Everything's black. So brighten those stuff up. Okay, next, we are looking for weaknesses or excuses to not hire you. So I'll read that again. We are looking for weaknesses and excuses to not hire you. Okay, that sounds kind of strange, but that's what happens behind the scenes. We're looking through your portfolio, trying to pick out things that give us doubts. It's like, this guy, nah, he's not good at this. Or, oh man, look, his perspective sucks. Or, oh, look, his composition is really bad. Why are we doing that? It's because when you're working in a studio, you're very protective of that studio. You're also very protective of who gets in to share that job with you in a way. Not greedy or not being egotistic, nothing like that. Because people that generally work for a studio cares about the products they're on. And they want other people to come in to not only care about the product, but demonstrate the skills that could make this product go further. And if you have things here that give us doubts, well, they're gonna call that out. They're not gonna be like, oh, look, your perspective sucks, but no one says anything. They will say it. Some designer, if you're looking at all together, will be like, oh man, I think he's pretty bad at his foundations, or oh, he's really bad with color, or no, he's not very confident in his line sketching. These things will be said out loud, and those things will essentially mean that your portfolio is not going to make it. So you want your portfolio to just have no weaknesses. Best work only. Try not to give someone looking at your work a reason to find problems in your work. So because they're not there trying to excuse you, they're not going to do that. They're like, oh, he's bad at perspective, but I really like his color. Oh, he's really bad at anatomy, but the design's kind of interesting. It generally doesn't flow that way. It's generally the bad stuff gets pointed out, and that's the end of that portfolio. Okay, next, the last one is you need to not only convince art directors, but also producers and CEOs. Okay, people look at your work and not just always art directors. In fact, sometimes in the film industry, the art directors don't even see your work until you start working. They're being seen by producers. They're being seen by directors. Basically, sometimes people who are not from the art or design industry is making a judgment on your portfolio. So this goes back to things that are marketable, things that are easy to understand, things that tell a story, things that have good design, because these are things that someone who's not from the art side could see. So if you have bizarre stuff, disturbing stuff, violent things, sexual content, weird, bizarre, fine art, concept art, when a producer look at that, they don't even know what they're looking at. They're like, what is this stuff, right? You want your portfolio to be marketable. So, all right, next, let's see what I have. Last one before we go to the real world example. We are an hour and 17. Okay, going a little long, but hopefully you guys are putting up with this. Let me take a, I just coughed again, sorry. Number 8 to finish us off, which is some of my tips that are for you that are maybe not commonly mentioned when people are talking about portfolios, but I'll list them out here. Okay, I'm gonna go through these really quick because they're kind of fun. First one, if you are a citizen of a visa-friendly country, put it on your website somewhere. Probably not necessary, but might help, because in this multicultural, multi-internet or international development phase of things nowadays, a lot of studios have studios all over the world. Okay, and when they're looking for concept artists, they might actually put you in one of their divisions. So if you're from a country, for example, the US or UK, Germany, Australia, Canada, these are generally pretty visa-friendly countries, meaning that you're able to move around quite freely. So a studio could see that and go, oh, good, this guy's work is good, and we won't have any problems with visas. You might think that's a very small thing, but it actually, for some studio, is a big deal. For example, there are studios in Europe. When they contact us for hirings, they specifically say, make sure you only recommend designers who are EU, right? That's it. We're not doing visas at this point. So anyone who's not EU, we're not going to look at their portfolio. So that tells you very straightforward right there that visa plays a big role. And some companies in the US, for example, don't do visas. Now, don't let that depress you. It doesn't mean that you cannot get a job if you're from a country that the visa is hard to get. But if you, I mentioned that in part 2, which is if you're not from a country with a friendly visa, well, hide that information first. Make the clients fall in love with your work first. And if they really like your stuff, some will make ways to help you get a visa. So it's possible, but it's hard. Okay, I even worked at some big studios that are just ginormous with billions of dollars, and sometimes they refuse to do a visa, especially when you are a student. Keep that in mind. If you're a pro, they will do anything possible to get you in. Say you are like, say Sparth, right? I mentioned him earlier, the art director over at Halo. If he comes on the market, I think his citizenship is French, I believe, right? And he's currently working at 343 up in Seattle. Imagine Sparth one day say, I'm available. I don't want to do Halo no more. There's going to be a lot of studios who do anything possible to try to grab that guy, because artists like him could influence your project greatly, and he's a very valuable asset. So no one's going to care that what country he's from. They're going to try their best to try to get him into whatever country you're currently at. So, but that works for professionals with a lot of experience. They're very valuable. These guys are worth a lot of value to a studio. But if you're a student, you don't have any experience, and yet we have to pay out thousands and thousands of dollars in lawyer fees and paperwork to try to get you into a country, they're a little bit hesitant unless your work is exceptional. So anyways, if you're in a visa-friendly country, maybe you want to hint at that. Together with that is if you can speak multiple languages, it might help to list them. Again, we're in a multicultural development phase now. Many studios have, for example, EA could have a studio in Shanghai and they have one in Vancouver, and the two of them are working together. So, for example, you could speak Chinese. Pretty helpful, because you could be a bridging designer that you could work with artists in the States, and at the same time you could work with artists that only speak Mandarin, for example. And that's very helpful. It's really helpful. I should mention today's development cycle. So if you could speak French, if we mentioned Ubisoft, for example, UB has studios in Montreal and in France. And if you could speak French and you could speak English and you could speak, say, Chinese, and you're a good concept designer, that is a ginormous plus, because now you could work with their lead artists in French, speak French. You could then develop English, right, with their studios in America, and then they have a studio in, say, Shanghai. You could then talk in Chinese. That's very helpful, because and that will probably make you into an art director very quickly. So yeah, it doesn't hurt to mention languages. Okay, next, don't come off desperate. Okay, carry yourself with confidence. Again, we're doing tips here for those who are listening without visuals, right? Tips. So don't come off desperate. That's like, hello, I'm a student. I just graduated. I'm really looking for work. Please take my portfolio. I'm available right now. Okay, when you list that kind of stuff on a portfolio, we just tell, okay, are you really that good? Because if you're good, all right, students should be offering you jobs. You sound pretty desperate, so maybe there's something off. Right? Even if your work is good, it's like, why are you so desperate to find a job if your work is this good? Maybe there's something wrong with your portfolio, or something's wrong with your personality. Who knows, right? So, and there could be nothing wrong with you. But again, you can make someone second guess, which is like you're sounding way too desperate to get a job. What's going on here? Especially when your work is strong. Instead, carry yourself with confidence. Put up good work. And just leave it like that. Okay, you don't need to say things like, I lost my job, I really need a job. Because on the other side is that if they see you as desperate, they could also take advantage of you. They could maybe pick you up for a much lower rate than you're currently worth, and things like that. So just put yourself out there with confidence. Next, don't let your portfolio get stagnant. Big one for students. Okay, if you're looking for work and you haven't found work right away, keep that portfolio updated. I've seen portfolios that get stagnant for a year. Now, if you have a job, you let your portfolio stagnate, totally fine. In fact, that's very common, because you get into your first job, most likely for the next 3 years, you can't show anything. Maybe up to 7 years, you can't show anything because the stuff you're working on is under non-disclosure. So you see a student get a job and their portfolio just goes to dead. It just dies. Like they haven't updated it for like 2 years. Totally cool, totally understandable, and we're not going to judge you on that. But if you're a student and you haven't found a job for a year and you have nothing new on your portfolio, major problem, because we'd be like, what did you do for a whole year? Did you just sit at home, play video games and watch movies and not work in your portfolio at all, and just cross your fingers that we'll somehow hire you? That's a big sign of being lazy or procrastination if you don't have a job and you don't work on your portfolio. So don't let that stuff go stagnant while I take another sip of drink. Okay, next, you have one chance to impress. Use it wisely. Prepare a portfolio. Don't keep spamming people with it. do a very professional portfolio. Take the time to make work if you don't have it. Take time to clean up your stuff if they're not so super nice. Basically, make it super nice before you send it out, okay? Because they're not going to look at your stuff twice or 3 times. They're not going to do that. They're not going to check your blog every 2 weeks. They're going to look at it once and decide if you're good or not. They might come back in a year, maybe 6 months, but they're not going to be periodically checking every 2 weeks. So put up something nice and then show it, okay? Use that first chance showing as your only chance, okay? Think of it that way. Next, set real expectations. Know where you stand and seek jobs accordingly. Okay, this is also just some real world mentioning here that if your work is not that great, you don't have experience, the likelihood if you get into BioWare or Blizzard is pretty low. But sometimes you see students pursuing those jobs. I don't see anything wrong with it, but at least have some backups. Don't think, okay, I just graduated, I don't have any experience, my work is so-so, and I'm the only studio I'm sent to is Blizzard Entertainment, and then sit at home going, how come Blizzard's not calling me? How come Blizzard's not calling me? Well, chances are they're never going to call you because your work is not to industry standard for them. So send to Blizzard if you want. You can try it, but again, use some caution there because you have one chance to impress. So if you're going to send something that's not so good, there goes your chance. Instead, set your expectations. If your work is at a certain quality level, look for studios that you think are going to like your work. Okay, you might not have a chance with the AAAs, with the BioWares and things like that. Look elsewhere. Give yourself a way into the business first. Blizzard's not going anywhere. If your dream is to work at Blizzard Entertainment, it could happen in the next 5 or 10 years. Be patient. I knew a student a long time ago. I used to teach at Art Center. This girl, she just wanted to work at Pixar so bad. Like I was teaching her, I'm like, where do you want to work? She's like, I want to work at Pixar. I mean, so bad. Like you could tell that's her dream. But she was also very real. She knows that Pixar don't simply hire you straight out of school. It's pretty rare. So she worked hard. She got into animation, did all sorts of stuff. And I think 5 to 6 years later, she's at Pixar. So she's there now. So it takes time because studios like Pixar, like Disney and DreamWorks and Blizzard, they're experienced, very grounded companies. So they know what they're looking for. And generally, they're not going to take a chance with someone straight out of school unless you're extremely, extremely good. So set your expectations. Okay, next. Ask trusted friends for advice. Don't get angry. Okay, this is a weird one, but when you put your portfolio together, ask for some advice. If a bunch of your trusted friends tell you that piece is not good, then accept it as not good and maybe take it out. Because sometimes you get people ask for advice, but they only want to hear the good part, and that's not advice. That's just praise. If you want to get praise and ask for, can you give me some praises? Which sounds weird, but that's sometimes what people want to hear. When you actually give them real advice, they get angry. That's why I put, if you want advice, be prepared for both sides of the answer. If they give you something you don't want to hear, that's what you ask for. And if you're good friends of yours and honest with you, then probably take their advice seriously. So they tell you, hey man, this piece is just not good. Take it out. The other friend tells you this piece is not so good. Take it out. The art director friend tells you that piece is not so good. Take it out. Don't be like, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I like this piece. Then why'd you ask for advice in the first place? And especially when an art director or someone in the industry tells you it's not good, who are you going to trust? Someone with a lot of experience or you, a student just out of school? So yeah, get some opinions and follow them if you deem them to be correct. Okay, next, plan your timing, research dev cycle. This is more of a hardcore thing, but companies generally have hiring trends. They look for people when a project is wrapping up, or sometimes in the year end when people, for example, leave their jobs when the product ships. These are all sometimes good timing because there's a little bit of luck in this business, but you can also beef up that luck with correct timing. So if for example, before E3, the freelance scene is extremely hot, generally around February, coming up next month, crazy amounts of freelance because people are pushing for an E3 show. So anything that's not ready yet, they're going to be cramming people to work on these things to make E3. And sometimes they'll loosen up the requirements for that because after E3 is over, now they got to work and they're going to make the requirements pretty high. You also get that kind of stuff when the project's behind schedule. It's delayed. Now the publisher's like, man, we got to make this thing ship next year. Now they're going to be also less careful with who they bring in. And these for students is great news. Basically, you could drop your quality slightly because the studio is in high need of somebody. And when someone's desperate, they will drop the bar slightly. And it sounds funny, but this is actually true. You could use this to your advantage when you're a student, okay? To get yourself into a studio that otherwise might not hire you. But you have to be aware of what that timing is. Now, same thing when the project ends. Generally, when a big studio finishes a project, you will get a handful of people that leaves. It's very common. On films, pretty much the entire project is gone, or the team is gone. That's just how the film industry operates. Even TV and animation. In games, you generally ship a product and a few people will leave. And so if a concept guy leaves, well, boom, that's a position that's open. So if you know that's happening, prepare your portfolio in advance. Okay, next, be patient but proactive, meaning that once you send your stuff out, don't expect the email coming in 1 hour. I literally hear these things from students and other people I've taught in the past, which is like, my blog is live. I'm checking my email every 1 hour. I'm not getting anything. It's like, man, give it some time. Sometimes it could take up to a year, sometimes 6 months before someone contacts you. This business that you're trying to get after, which is the concept art, which, by the way, I have a podcast on it, right? Episode 1 of podcast talks about this. This is a hard to get in business with very little jobs. It's not a field in which thousands of jobs are available. At any point on this planet, I'm guessing there's no less than maybe 100, maybe a few hundred, if that, concept jobs available. So you have to be really good, very patient, but be proactive. That means update your blogs, update your websites and things like that to say that you're active. But at the same time, be patient. They're not going to call you the day you release your portfolio. Unless you're like just crazy good. They might do that. So, oh man, this is running really long, hour and a half. But let's keep going here. This is going to be one of the longest episodes of Design Cinema. But hey, let's do it. Okay, next, some students require release of rights signed before work is reviewed. So what this means is some students like Disney, not sure it's DreamWorks probably, they have this right release, which is before you send the stuff in or before they even, before they even look at your work, you have to release the rights. It sounds scary, but it's very common. They're not doing that to copy your stuff. They're not doing that to steal your stuff to put in a book. They're doing that just to actually prevent them from being sued by you. Because imagine a place like Disney, you are sending one portfolio and you might think your portfolio is special. But on a yearly basis, Disney gets probably thousands of portfolios. That equals to hundreds and thousands of designs and art that they're looking at. The chances of something from their movie having a similar design to something in a portfolio is actually pretty high. For example, they're working on Frozen 2, right? If they're working on that, well, there might be a chance that someone drew a frozen castle and it looks very similar to something Disney has already done. They're making release rights just in case your portfolio comes in and they look at it and go, holy crap, this guy's stuff looks just like what we did for Frozen 2. If they don't have a protection against that, the artist who sent that in can actually sue Disney saying, hey, look, your film came out. It's because you looked at my portfolio and you copied my idea. They put that right of release there to protect against that. So trust me, they're not going to copy your stuff. They're not going to do that because think from a logical point of view. Because sometimes younger students think, man, I'm not going to sign that. That's crazy. I'm not going to give my rights to Disney. Then you think, so Disney, this multi-billion-dollar company, a lot of artists want to work there and they work for years and years and years to try to get into Disney. Finally, they get into Disney and you're working with 10 different concept guys, all worked really hard to be in that room to finally work for Disney. And they'll be like, okay, guys, let's drop everything we've done and let's dig through people's portfolios and look for something to copy. That just doesn't happen. They want to do their own stuff. They want to make their own IPs. If I'm working for Disney, the last thing I want to do is look for other people's work and use it. I want to make my work be used by Disney, right? So anyways, these things are there. These rights, release documents, not big of a deal. Okay, next, don't expect clients to reply to you. Yeah, I'll mention this in the Q&A session, but let's continue Disney example. If they get thousands of portfolios a year, they're not going to reply to everybody, especially those who are really bad. The portfolios are just horrible. They don't have any kind of obligations to anyways, because I'll mention, this gets pretty big, why studios sometimes don't reply. But mostly has to do, mostly has to do with they're simply too busy. Too much stuff comes in and they're not going to reply to everybody. Okay, if they don't reply to you, just take it, be humble about it, and probably they don't like your work. Okay, and if they do like your work, they'll generally reply back to you. Okay, next, remember there are hundreds of people applying for dozens of jobs. Okay, so keep your expectation in check. You send something in, you'll be like, oh man, when are they calling me? Well, you're not the only one, especially for companies like Blizzard, when they put something like concept art position available. I'm guessing hundreds of portfolios go into that studio in a month, hundreds, if not thousands. So you just won. So you got to play your cards here of hoping your work is the best, hoping your work fits the bill, hope that your stuff is exactly what they're looking for, and your timing is also correct. A lot of factors go into that. So be patient and know the odds, okay? And last few things, don't forget about the Kickstarter, indie scene, okay? Don't just pursue the BioWares and the Blizzards and things like that and the Bethesdas. They're always going to be there. They're not going away. get in the business first, get started, get some industry experience, get some work relationship with people. So that way you can see how the pipeline works, right? Because a school can only get you so far when you start working for reals and have a paycheck and have deadlines that are bound by if you mess up, you get fired. That kind of pressure needs to be learned. So yeah, get started somewhere. Don't just pick your triple A's. Go for some of the smaller studios. And that pretty much wraps up the tip part. And the next episode 88 of Design Cinema, and I'll probably also make it into a podcast, I will cover the next steps, which is the interview process, what happens when someone replies your email, basically the next follow-up to if you get contacted, okay, even how to behave on the job. So that covers a little bit of the audio version. Now I'm actually going to jump in after I take a sip of drink here. I'm going to jump into a quick version. Okay, for those looking on the video session, I'm going to load up a very quick mock-up of a website to demonstrate all the stuff I just talked about. If you're listening to the podcast, go to the fcdpodcast.com and find the image there. It's going to be a pretty big file, a 13 meg JPEG. So I hope it doesn't crash our website because you're using a new host for the podcast. I have no idea how much traffic it's going to allow before it dies, but it's a 13 meg file. You can download it and you can just look at it in your browser, which I'll do here as well. Let me open that up. Okay. So browsers can open JPEGs, so it's very easy to view. So here I am. For those watching the video, I have the browser open with a mock website, and I just made it as simple as possible to demonstrate a bunch of things here. I'm using my own work because I'm not allowed to use other people's stuff, and hopefully this gets the point across. So let's start. Okay, number one, most blogs or online portfolios, you have some kind of banner. Use that to demonstrate some of your best work and maybe even something you're interested in working on. Okay, don't put a picture of your dog or your family portrait or things like that. Okay, this is an industry professional portfolio site. Make it say things about your work. Everything else, again, if you're a professional, you can put a picture of your dog. Nobody cares, and that, in fact, that's kind of cool. But if you're a student looking for work, let's make sure your stuff is your work, okay? And generally, I like to see stuff that's related to what you like best. So for me, I like science fiction stuff, so I put a science fiction background, a banner. Next, make sure your name is on there somewhere, okay? Followed by, I put my job position. That just kind of, it's kind of like going to a steak restaurant, right? You go into a restaurant, you sort of already know what they're going to serve you. It helps. So in this case, by simply saying I'm a costume designer, same thing as this is a steakhouse, you're kind of aware what's going to come after this. Because what if it's a portfolio that's a little bit student-like, right? It has art, it has illustrations, it has designs. I might not know what I'm looking at. I might be like, is this an artist portfolio or illustrator portfolio or what? By stating that I'm a costume designer, you're telling the viewer, you are trying to hire me as a designer and not a, say, book cover illustrator, right? I also put content designer. So for those listening and don't have the image, it says Fengzu. First line, second says concept designer, and I also put based in Los Angeles. Obviously, I'm in Singapore right now working, but I am from Los Angeles. Whoa, a crazy car just drove by. That's got to be a Lamborghini or something like that. You probably heard it on the audio here. Anyways, I put based in Los Angeles. That's the hint that I'm already there. So therefore, and Los Angeles is sort of the epicenter of entertainment design. So if you're a studio that's even local in Los Angeles, I could probably even possibly come in to talk to you. So that helps also establish that I'm already there. So no visa issues and things like that. And lastly, very important, I put my email address. The one I put here is not real, so please don't use that to write me. That is a fake email address. But put your email, easily seen, and that's it. That's the only thing you really need to have. I don't have any about pages or anything like that, just purely my work. Now, let's go into how to plan out your page. Notice I started with science fiction, and the color palette is blue-red. That's my banner. The second image that followed it is another science fiction image that's also blue-red, but that's not how the original image was. I've actually tweaked this image. I'm actually going to go into Photoshop right now and open up the original version of the one I just tweaked to show you how much difference there are. So you can see in Photoshop here, the original one is purple, blue. The one that's tweaked is slightly different in color palette, as you can see. So this is what I meant by you could color grade your images to make your portfolio flow. I made that tweak to make the image match with the banner image that I started. So let me go back to the website here as I go down. And next, I'm using a design as well. In the first image I have is a nightclub with kind of two statues on the side. I'm using two statues to lead your eye downwards into a scene that has a couple of tall buildings. And notice the color is still shifting to the purples. That's also been changed from the original. Let me pull up Photoshop and load up that image to show you, right? So the original image is a lot more kind of aqua blue. The tweaked version is more purple. Again, that is done to make the website flow better from one image to the next, right? So if you're watching the video, you can clearly see it's been color graded. It's been changed. Okay, let's keep going. That leads to a vertical image. Just to break it up a bit, so now everything is so horizontal. And this image also has been tweaked. The image on the right of a city that I'm showing right now, the original version is a lot more green, as you can see here. So that's been tweaked to make the two match. So why am I doing this? It's because one, it's very eye-pleasing when the color palettes are matching. It's just like a film, right? You color grade it. Two, I'm actually mixing a bunch of projects that don't belong together, sort of belong together by simply making their colors the same. So like these were all done at very different times, in fact, different years. But by doing it this way, the client might think they're from the same project, and that gives you the perception of you working on projects versus every image is different, everything's changing all the time. Okay, let's keep going. Then I use that to fade into a vehicle design, very gently with a blue palette, but I have a very organic vehicle. That leads to another organic vehicle facing the opposite direction, and I've tweaked that heavily. I have this green bug-like vehicle, which is something, a language I like to do. That one, the original version, is very green, in fact. As I put up in Photoshop, for those watching, you can see. So that's been modified heavily to fit the website. So it goes into a blue palette to fit the style. Okay, let's go back to our browser. That leads to another design in that world. So these are three designs that are similar to each other to show a similar design language pass. Okay, and now I'm going to a little bit of a break. So I'm showing some smaller images to break the page up and still color tweaked and themed. So the vehicles face each other, for example, for composition, the color shifts into blues, and I'm slowly decreasing the saturation down to black and white. But even the image I'm showing on screen right now is the interior of a spaceship, still science fiction based. Excuse me, let me take a drink. But it is going to black and white with a tiny hint of blue, and that allows me to fade into line drawings, which now demonstrates sketching skills, and production art, which is not only can you paint, you could also draw things in production in 3/4 scale, the things we mentioned earlier, right? Production art. So accurate 3D drawings. But they're not black and white purely, they are slightly blue, but then for the second set of line drawings, I'm shifting slightly into the reds. Very subtle, but it's going to reds now. And then the last batch of my line drawings, which shows composition and scene planning and storyboarding, are now in the dark reds. I'm doing this on purpose, and you'll see why. Okay, the dark reds now fade into some character work, which are also in the warm brown reds, because I'm going to use these kind of characters to transition into environment of fantasy. So I've switched from sci-fi into fantasy in the way the image flows, which are going from production paintings into line drawings, and line drawings themselves are switching colors to deliver a fantasy set. And the fantasy set is now red, so it flows very nicely as you go down the page. Hopefully, right? I'm doing this very quickly. I'm not using every image I have in my portfolio, obviously, but I'm just using things that hopefully will make you understand what I'm trying to get at here, okay? And for the fantasy images, right, I'm picking things that are subliminal. I picked 2 images that has gates in it. So that way you think like you're entering something. You're about to go into somewhere new. So both images shows a gate. The first one is a red gate, right? Kind of a Middle Eastern inspired design here. And the second one's a very fantasy inspired, but it's also an entrance or a fort or a gate, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of like, I'm going somewhere, and that kind of refreshes. You just went from science fiction and now going to enter another world, the fantasy world. Okay, so second fantasy image here is red, but now with more green. So therefore my third image, I'm going to shift it into the greens. Right, so you can see the orange is now there, and now it's green. The original version of the airship I have for the third image is not green. It is in fact blue. I shifted it on purpose to make these images flow. Next, I go into the blues because now we're in the sky. The airship is in the sky. So I now shift it into the sky, which is blue, and that gives me 2 vertical pieces, kind of epic scale, fantasy things. And that leads into a blue scene, now back with red, with a creature design. Okay, so I'm kind of just showing a variety of not only themes, but different subject matter, going from sci-fi to fantasy, to characters to creatures. And creature leads to black and white. Different creatures face opposite directions, so the page flows compositionally. Leads to sketches, because when I show the way you think, right? Even rough sketches is totally fine to put up very loose and very rough stuff. Okay, totally fine. More rough stuff. In fact, some of these are from Design Cinema. I'm showing some of the dragon drawings I did a while back. That goes to black and white scenes, and now I'm switching scenes again. And this time, instead of using color, I'm using a similar camera. Okay, again, I'm using this to demonstrate a variety of ways you can switch up your portfolio. So this is not one way where you have to use all three or all four. I'm just showing you a couple ideas. So in this scene, I'm using two compositions that are very similar, which is a person looking at something. So there's the first shot, the girl is looking at this altar. The second shot is kind of this demon guy looking at these snake statues. And I switched to a color one, a complementary color piece of this kind of gothic scene, looking at this gothic church in a graveyard type of scene. The color palette is also blue and red. And then, so I'm using a theme to now switch from fantasy slightly into the real world, as you can see, I'll start doing here. The next shot is another altar, but now I purposely desaturated the colors. The first image is deep reds, deep blues. The second image is a lighter blue, and now the red's going to orange. The third image desaturates even further. The blue is going to a little bit of a greenish blue or aqua blue, and the orange is now toned down even further. But the three, for those watching, you can see the image saturation keeps dropping. But the color range, the hues are desaturated basically, right? But we're not changing into greens or blues, right? They stay in the same range, but just desaturates, okay? And then we keep going here. I've established a desaturated blue. I use that theme to get into the real world. I'm showing a sort of a graveyard scene here. Now that I've established a house in the real world, this is the thing to show clients you can do real world and photorealism. Okay, so that fades into a house. I have a house in a haunted graveyard. Well, I fade into another house. So the color palette from the blue continues shifting, and now the second house has some green in it. So I'm using that to then bring in green. The image following that, the house, right? The house is now red and green. Real world, both these images are now real world. Now the house is going to lead to a Japanese temple, which is red on top and then green on the bottom. So these two now frame very nicely. So hopefully you guys are watching this on the video. Otherwise, it's a little hard to follow if it's just podcast. So go ahead and download that JPEG so you can follow along here. But I'm the one that says, I'm Legend, the red house with the guy sitting on the porch, followed by a red Japanese temple. So those color palettes are being shifted to work really well next to each other. And they just kind of compositionally work. I'm almost coming to an end here. So for the Japanese building, I also inserted, or for this painting, there are two military people walking along the path. Okay, here's another way to switch subject matter, which is hint at similar themes. Now, because it's military, I'm the hint in military content. So now, excuse me here, I have a tank or two tanks, also color shifted to work with this warm yellow-green. I'm going to Photoshop to show you what these tanks look like in the original version, okay, which is a lot more blue-green. Okay, so the original version you can see here, it's a blue-green kind of image. The website version is more warm because I need that warm color to match the image above it, as you can see here, right? Slightly color shifted using the color balance tool. And that leads into, let's go back to our browser, a few more military images. Again, compositionally flipping, so tank facing from left to right, helicopter faces right to left, and tank faces back to left to right. So you can see here, I'm demonstrating probably 4 to 5 different ways you could smoothly transition your portfolio, at the same time showing your clients a variety of designs, sketches, roughs, comps, and themes and style adaptations. So this is something you could do, because if I didn't edit these images and just randomly threw it together, maybe the portfolio will still work, but it makes the viewing experience less smooth. And my job here is to try to make that person stay on the site, look at it for 1 minute to 2 minutes, and decide that, okay, this work is reasonable. It looks pretty good. And that's the goal that you're trying to get to, right? Obviously, I have more work I could put on here. You might be asking, hey, Feng, why don't you just do this for your own blog, right? Because I don't have a site like this. My portfolio is really messy. Because at the start of this show, I mentioned that for professionals, you really don't need to do this. This is for students. You have one chance to show something, then show it well. Once you have a job, it doesn't really matter much, because we don't, I mean, for myself, I don't use these things to find jobs at all. I don't use portfolio sites. I don't use blogs. I don't use anything. I use my projects. So generally producers call you, say, hey, we heard you worked on this and this and this. We have a project coming up. Sometimes they call you, they don't even know your work. And you might be like, that's so crazy. They haven't seen your portfolio and they're hiring you. It's because if you've been to a couple of projects, especially some bigger ones, they know you're probably pretty good. For example, if you worked at Industrial Light and Magic on The Force Awakens as a concept artist, I'm pretty sure you're freaking good at it, because IOM would never have hired you for a high-profile project like Star Wars if you weren't good. So if you worked on Harry Potter, Star Wars, and a couple big movies and films, the chances of your portfolio being crazy good is extremely high. So producers know that. So they just call you without even looking at your portfolio. They know by your projects how good you are. So that's the kind of case once you're in the business that these blogs and stuff like that doesn't really serve me much of a purpose. A lot of the stuff is the way we get our work is internal. So that's why I haven't built a blog like this, because I don't, one, I don't really need it, and nor do I have the time to do so. But for a student, very, very useful to build a portfolio structure to find you work. Okay, and the very end of this, by the way, I put my name and contact one more time, so if someone actually makes it to the end of your portfolio, because I'm guessing most students, you guys have about 30 to 40 images to show, so we could get to the bottom probably within 2-3 minutes, or even a minute, I think. Just put your contact there so we don't have to go scroll to the top to remind ourselves what we're looking at, because keep in mind we might be looking at a lot of people's blogs at the same time. So if we've liked your work, just make it easy for us to find you. Write your email and boom, you're halfway in the studio already. So anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and those listening to our podcast, I hope you enjoyed it as well. This went on for a really long time, but I think it was a fun episode, and I really enjoyed doing it. It's something that hopefully our students out there who graduated could watch this as well. And good luck to all of you guys looking for work. And like I mentioned, if you guys have comments, questions, leave it in the box below. And you guys can make comments on the podcast site as well. If you log in, I think using WordPress or something like that. That site is temporary. The UI for all that will probably change the next coming month or so, but for now it works. So I hope you guys enjoy the podcast edition of Design Cinema as well. Until then, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you guys in episode 88. All right, see you out. Bye-bye.